We begin the Daf Mesechtes Bava Metzia Daf Samach. We begin on the last line of Daf Testament Beis, which continues the theme of the previous Mishnayos, discussing the halachas of Einah, which we spoke about Einah's Devarim, but going back to Einah's Mammon regarding the charging of the pricing of when there's a sale, to make sure that there's fair pricing and you don't do any unfair business practices. Turn today's Daf, the entire world, and we should have a good mood. So we're discussing today's Daf are Ima Avrim Peiros Bepeiros. A person is not allowed to mix in when you're selling one type of fruit. You can't be mixing in a different type of fruit into that mixture. So to Ima Avrim Shimmer Yain B'Yain, you can't if you're selling wine, you can't just mix in the sediments of the wine into the wine. Or Mishnah Zar Mayin B'Yain, or let's say someone had that water got mixed into his wine. You can't sell it in the store. Let people know that this is diluted wine. And you cannot sell to a merchant, even though you let him know, because he's going to take the stuff that you gave him, the merchant, and he's going to use it in a deceitful type of a way. The person, it's not so, marketing is not really such a, you have to be careful. You can't just give out to children like nash and candies, because then they're going to come to your store, and then it's going to be an unfair business practice that you're going to take over the competition. A person should not possibly even go below market price, and loyovas agrees, and the person can't just select out certain pieces and make it look that it's better than what it really is. So begin the current Daf Nun Testament Beis, last line on the Amid. Says the Mishnah, Ima Arvin Peiros Bepeiros. A person is not allowed to mix produce with produce, meaning if there's a homeowner that says that I'm selling you the fruits of that field for that amount of saw. He can't mix in peiros from another field. Even though they're both new produce, and there's a continuing type of samach and aleph, I don't have to say chadashim b'yeshanim. Meaning, if let's say he had made up to sell him old produce, not old as in spoiled, but it's actually better when it's has been around a little bit. He shouldn't mix in new produce, because the old produce is dry and you can make flour better than the new type of grain. So I don't have to tell you that if you told me you're selling an old grain, you can't mix in the new because new is inferior. Now, in truth, they said that Bayayin Hitiru, regarding wine, they permitted you la'arav kosher barach, to mix in the strong wine into the mild wine. Because it's the strong wine actually makes the mild wine better. So therefore, let's say he made up to sell him the mild wine, he's allowed to mix in the strong wine. And as Rashi explains, it's specifically saying you can mix in the strong into the mild, but not the mild into strong. Let's say he made up to sell him kasha, strong wine, you're not allowed to mix in the mild wine. And I don't have to tell you that by the Isser of the Peiros, that we said it's specifically that you can't mix in new produce into the old produce, but to mix the old produce into new produce, that would be okay, because again, that would be making it better. Similar to like Rashi says, you're allowed to mix in the strong wine, as the Mishnah tells us, into the mild wine. Continues the Mishnah, Im Arvin Shimre Yayin B'Yayin. You're not allowed to mix in the wine sediments, those are the pieces on the bottom, into the wine, which the Gemara is going to explain what this halacha is. But you could put in its sediments. So the Gemara is going to explain exactly that differentiation. Now, Mishnah is Arv Mayin B'Yain. If someone has that water got mixed into his wine, he's not allowed to sell it in the store, which you sell it, a little bit at a time, pruta pruta, unless you let everybody know that water is mixed into this wine. Now, v'loy tager, you cannot sell it all at once to a merchant, who the middleman, even if you let him know, because he's going to use it deceitfully, he's going to sell it in the store, and he's not going to say that there's water mixed in, and if you're not allowed to sell it to him, because he's going to then sell it in the unfair way. Now, the place where the custom was to dilute, put in water into the wine, then yatilu, then you're allowed to put in, because since that's the minig, so there's no error over here, because all their wines had that presumption that that's how it was. Hatager, a merchant, he could take from 5 different granaries, and they could put into one silo, meaning everybody knows that this merchant doesn't have his own field, he's not a farmer. Everyone knows he buys from many different people, and that's how we're presuming. So he's allowed to put into a storehouse where he puts all his grain, which that's where they do the threshing and the winnowing of the grain. And the norm is a merchant buys from many different people at the time of when it's the threshing, and he puts into his one own silo. And so to Mehei Gitis, he could buy from 5 wine presses. He could put into one vat. Again, as long as he's not intending to mix in other things, and then the word's going to go out that, oh, this merchant, this middleman, oh, he buys most of it from like the high quality places. He's going to specifically, deceitfully mix in from other places, and all his neighbors think that, oh, it's from that other high quality place. As long as he's not doing for that purpose, he's allowed to have that he's mixing from other places. Everyone knows that that's what a merchant does. So, going to the opening halacha of our Mishnah, I don't have to say when we said that you're not allowed to mix these different types of produce, the new ones into the old ones. So you don't have to say that chadashes me'arba. If let's say the new grain, which is generally the cheaper because it's not yet good to like make flour out of it. If let's say costs 4, you could get 4 sa for a sela. The yishanis, but the older one, which is the higher quality, mishalish, you can only get 3 for the sela. Of course, I don't have to tell you the ema arvin. Of course, you can't mix in the old one into the new one into the old one because since you're making a presumption that you're selling him the old one, that's what you made up. Comes out you're doing oina, you're selling him a cheaper one as if it's the more expensive one. So that would be obvious. But the chiddush of the Mishnah is even if actually the newer grain is actually more expensive, you can only get 3 sa. And the old ones you can get 4 sa for a sela. Still, Im Arvin, you cannot mix in, even though the new one is more expensive, you cannot mix in the more expensive new one into the old one that you told me you're going to sell them. Why? Because a person wants to age them. Meaning, the reason why the new one is more expensive is not because it's better as good as the old one. It's not, and therefore you're not allowed to mix it in. It's just that a person wants to age it. And this guy who made people like they aging their own salamis, they want to age his own wheat, and this guy who made up with the old one doesn't want to age it. So if you're not allowed to mix it with them, the new ones, even though it's more expensive, and that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. The Mishnah then said, "Be'emes amar," in truth, they said that beyayin hitiru la'orev kasha berach. Regarding wine, you're allowed to mix in the strong wine into the mild wine, because l'maisa you're making it better by mixing it in. So Amar Belazar says, "Ada amra," which ada is like the word hada, which means zois emeres. Like this tells us. Kol be'emes amru. Whenever it says in truth they said, which are the words of our Mishnah, be'emes amru, halachahi, that's the halacha. Meaning, how do you see that this is what the halacha is like that? Because when the fact that the Mishnah gives the reasoning, the rationale, that because it makes it better, and that means to say that it's airtight logic. So that's when the Mishnah says the word be'emes to tell you that whenever it says the word be'emes, that's the halacha, and you don't have to think twice about that. Now, the Gemara, however, qualifies this teaching of allowing you to mix in the strong wine into the mild wine. Amr ibn Nachman, he says, however, ubein hagita shanu. This is specifically between the pressing, meaning during the fermenting, which it makes it better because it ferments one with the other, and they become like one. They harmonize. They become one taste. But after the fermenting, the wine pressing is over, which each one already absorbed its own flavor, its own aroma, then it doesn't make it better. It actually makes it worse. So this halacha that you're allowed to mix it in is only when it's fermenting. Then they enhance each other. Says the Gemara, but today, currently, people actually do mix the wines even when it's not during the fermenting, even afterwards. Amar Papi says, yeah, the idea, because everyone knows that that's what people do when they mix it in. And they're Michael, they're part of it, and therefore it's something that's permitted to be done because that's what everyone already does. He says, Hamani, who is this? Rebachi, it's Rebacha, meaning this that people do this is because the Tanna in Abraisa Rebacha Mata B'Dova Hanitim. Rebacha actually allows you with something that could be taste. If a person could taste it before he buys it, he could differentiate and he could realize that something's mixed in. So even though we said that it makes it worse and it shouldn't be allowed after the fermentation is over, but if you could taste it and you could realize it and still you buy it, that's not considered enough, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and mix it in. But then the Mishnah said, "Ve'ema arvin shimmer yain b'yain." You're not allowed to mix in the wine sediments, the grape sediments, into the wine. But you could mix in the sediments. The Gemara says, "Wait a second, it seems to contradict." But you say in the Reisha ema arvin klal, you're not allowed to mix in any sediments, and then you say, but it's sediments you could. If you're going to say, yeah, my nice what does it mean that you let him mix in its sediments? It means the komoy delays only if you let him know, but if you don't, then you cannot. You can't say that. Because I'm like Tani Seifa, look a little further in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if let's say that you dilute it with water, you can't sell in the store unless you let him know. And you can't sell to merchants even if you let him know. Now, from the fact that the Seifa of the Mishnah, meaning the next case of water versus the case of the sediments, differentiates between letting the person know or not, the inference is that the previous halacha that we're talking about now of putting in the sediments is even if you don't let him know, because it should have differentiated, and it doesn't. It's only later in the Mishnah that makes that differentiation. So how do we resolve the contradiction? Are you allowed to put in the sediments or not? Maybe this is hachikama. This is what the Mishnah is saying. You're not allowed to mix in the sediments of the wine that was siphoned off yesterday, and then the sediments remained. You cannot mix those sediments b'shal yoim with the wine that was siphoned off today, which the sediments of that one would ruin other wine. So too, you can't take the sediments of today and mix it into the wine that was sifted off yesterday. But what is the Mishnah saying? But you're allowed to take the sediments of the wine itself, which Rashi says yesterday and today is not precise. Same thing it would be on the same day, but from two different barrels. It's just that's the norm, that generally one day and the other is from two different barrels. But it just means from the same barrel itself that you can mix in, because that wouldn't ruin it. But from some other batch, that would ruin it to mix in those sediments. And similar in the Bryce, Yomi says, the word shayfer is anything that, any clear thing that's poured calmly from one vessel to another one, that you don't want to have the sediments mixing. You're pouring that bottle that has on the bottom, you don't want it to get mixed in. You pour it slowly. That's called shafia, which actually from the word of shefet, like calm. So if someone, if someone's calmly pouring the wine to his friend, he shouldn't mix in yesterday's sediments in today's wine, not today's sediments with yesterday's wine. But you can mix yesterday's sediments with yesterday's wine, and today's sediments with today's wine. That's how we understand these two contradictory terminologies in our Mishnah. Then the Mishnah said, if someone has water got mixed into his wine, and I'll sell in the store because it's people are assuming it's the regular strong wine. Unless you let him know. Regarding a merchant, we said you're never allowed to, because you're assisting in the deceit, because he's not going to let people know, and he's going to deceitfully sell as if it's regular wine. So the Gemara brings a story related to this, that Rava, they brought him wine from the store. So mazge, that's how generally in Talmudic times they would do it. They would be moizgenes sakos, we say by the that he put in water, because that was the norm. But Tame, he tasted in leva basim. It wasn't aromatic. It wasn't a good wine. So Treasure Chaluza, maybe it was Costco. He gave it back to the store. He didn't want it anymore. Abai said, but not how we learn in the Mishnah. You're not allowed to sell it to a merchant even if you let him know, because he's going to use it for being deceitful. So a storer is like a tager, is a merchant, because this store owner is just going to go now sell it again with the presumption that it's a regular wine, but water is mixed in, and you're selling it to him, and you're being overlifting iver, which is the halacha of a Mishnah, that you're not allowed to go ahead and be an accomplice to the crime. So Rabbi said to him, made the idea. Oh, my diluting, which Tracy brings, this is where the Mazigah de Rava, that when I mix in water, everybody knows, because I put in a lot of water. So there's no deceit going on over here. Anyone's going to look at this wine is going to realize this is not a regular wine. It's way too watery. It says the Gemara, and if you're going to say, oh, you want to know how Rabbi, if it was a Mekachtais or whatever, yeah. What was his? Right, sure. There's when Rabbi Gelder gave it back. What did he? Shadri lechanusa. But we're talking about no. The wine has the water. That's the whole point. You want to talk about this water mixed in? The question is, what's our question? Our question is, are you allowed to, what's when you're returning something? Is I just don't like it. Right. What's my taste? Right. Maybe he sold it back. Who knows? Right. The question is, what did he do when he sent it back? But the Gemara has an interesting question. The Gemara says, okay, you're saying that it's very watery and no one's going to be able to be deceitful with this wine. But if you're going to say the tafi mechayle, maybe the store owner, so he's going to be like kids. The kids, they always mix this and mix that. Maybe he's going to make some more raw wine and he's going to mix it in until it's not so recognizable the taste of the water. And he's going to sell it like that. So maybe you're still an accomplice to the crime, because even though he's selling very watery, he's going to be like, okay, what am I going to do with this rubber wine? I'll mix in some more raw wine, but it'll still be watery. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, that you're so concerned, there's no end to it, because then Rashi says you shouldn't even be allowed to sell water to the store owner to sell, because he might mix wine into the water that you're selling him. And okay, we're only concerned, says Rashi, only at a time when I'm going to sell him something that, as it is, it could be deceitful. But to say that he's going to go add more wine to that watery wine, that we're not concerned. That's what Rashi makes it sound like when he says in the previous Rashi that it's like a lift in the Iver. Because what else? What are you doing wrong? You're selling to the tagger, to the merchant. You didn't do anything wrong, but you're an accomplice to the crime. The Mishnah said, in the place where the custom is that they mix the water to the wine, then you're allowed to sell for the price of standard wine. So in the Brisa, it depends, obviously, lemechza, l'shlish, v'lerevia, meaning everything according to the minig hamadina. That's how much water you could put in. If they put in usually 50%, fine. A third, fine. A quarter, fine. Whatever it is that the custom is, that's what you have to do. Obviously, don't change the amount of water, because that's also being deceitful. Amar he says, he says this permission of putting in water is only during the time of when it's fermenting, but after that would be problematic, and it's only then that you're allowed to put in the water. Now, continue on the next Mishnah, also continue on a similar vein regarding unfair business practices. So the Mishnah tells Yomei, he says that lo yechalik hachemveni, the store owner is not allowed to give out kloyes ve'goizen l'tinaikis. Kloyes are when the kernels are still moist. They would dry it in the oven, and that's kloyes, and they're very sweet. So you can't just give out these roasted grains, the granola bars, and these nuts to the children. You're giving out freebies Sunday afternoon. We're giving out, so that's unfair business practice, because the parents are going to be encouraged to buy only from him, because I want to go to that store because that store gives out lollies, right? So you're going to get all the business. So that's unfair. That's what Yehuda says. Chamatir say, no, that's permitted. Why not? Why can't you can do whatever it takes for the marketing for people to come to your store? Now, another halacha says the Mishnah, a storekeeper is not allowed to sell his items for less than the market price, to sell very cheap, to get everyone to come to his store, to undercut his competitors, because that's going to actually make his friend lose his parnasa, because everyone's running to this store because you can't compete. The sage said, no, should remember it for the good. Because of that, those who hoard the produce and they hold on to it are going to have to sell for cheap, and therefore it's going to cause price to go down, and therefore, to the contrary, this guy's like Eliyahu Navi, that he's selling for so cheap. Continues the Mishnah, lo yover es hagrisen. A person is not allowed to separate the inferior grits from the nice ones, which is the grisen are the split beans, that you're not allowed to select the waste matter, because it makes it look good. So it makes it more expensive, way more than the amount of waste matter that you take out. So in a way, it's a deceitful practice. That's the Rabbi Shloimy. Chacham say, no, it's permitted. The Gemara is going to explain why they hold it's permitted, that you're not considered doing anything wrong like that. Now, however, the Chacham agree, however, you can't just select the inferior ones, what's on the top of the silo, to show as if it's nice, but the waste matter that's inside, you don't select. You only take out from the top. Because that's what's called stealing the eye, which when you're selecting just the top, you make it look everything beautiful, but underneath, in the kishkes, it's all terrible. Similarly, one is not allowed to be mefarches, which the Gemara has explained. It means to make it nicer. Lo yasa adam, not a person. Meaning, let's say you're selling a non-Jewish slave. You can't just beautify him. Lo yasa behema, not an animal. Lo yasa not a vessel. You can't just enhance the appearance in order to sell it, when really it's not up to par for what you're trying to sell it as. Says Gemara, "My tamed Rabban." What's the reason Rabbanan that they hold that you are allowed to give out these promotional items to these kids to make them come, and then the parents and everyone suddenly coming to your store? Because the Amalei, he could tell his competitor, "Look, I'm guzi. I'm giving out nuts, but polig shiski, and you give up prunes." In other words, I'm not doing anything that's deceitful or that's unfair practice. This is what PR is, what marketing is for. You can do the same thing. Now the Mishnah said, "Machlekes v'livches is ashar." The first Tana said that you should not go below market value. They said, no, you should remember it for the good. Says Gemara, "My Talmud Rabban." What's the reason Rabban? In other words, like Rashi says, you're picking the word zachol atoiv, like a lashon bracha, is a great tzaddik bista that you're making, you're going below market price. Says Gemara, yeah, as a continuing namid beis, because you're widening the market, that those who store the produce are going to see that the price is tumbling, and they're going to sell very cheap, and that's a benefit for the people. And the Mishnah said, "Machlekes b'liyaves hagris niri abishalbash." Ashal said you cannot just take out the bad, the inferior grids from the good ones. That's the Rabbi Shloimy. Chacham said, no, you permit it. So says Gemaman Chacham, who is the Chachamim? It's Rabacha. The time like the Brayso, Rabacha Mata b'davar niri, he permits something that's visible. In other words, the consumer could see and understand what is the value of the waste matter that's selected from those other ones that remain. And he prefers to spend the money for this more than what it was because of the effort of taking out the bad. In other words, guy's selling a product in one of these grocery stores that, like, deboned chicken or whatever it is, I'm saying, and it's the value is charging way more than what the value is. It doesn't make it. The guy sees he wants to pay for that service. You could see it's your choice. It's not an unfair business practice. It's not deceitful if it's something that you could see for yourself. Then the Mishnah said, "Im farchasin, you can't beautify lo yasa adam mechulu v'lo yasa kelim." When you're selling something, you can't just make it look pretty on the outside. Tanamol in the Brayso explains this. Im sharvitin is a behema. Mesharvitin from like a lotion of a sharvit of a stick, as Gemara explains later on, that you make the hair of the animal stick up like a stick, which it looks like it's like fatty and healthy. You can't do that. Neither are you allowed to inflate the intestines, meaning the kishkes that are being sold by the butcher. Yeah, you want it to look wide and large. You can't just blow up the middle that it looks like it's good. Neither can you soak the meat in water, which whitens it, which makes the lean meat look fatty. Says Gemara, "My aim is sharvit." What does it mean that you cannot be misharvit the behema? So hachatergimu, here they translate it means mayid chizri. What happens is that they would give the animal to drink bran water, and it would inflate the intestines, and then the animals here would stand up. So some type of steroid or something like something here, like it makes it look much stronger than it really is. Ziri Omer Avkan, he says it's mizkafta, which is Rashi says ishtir libelaz, which what that means to say is that it's a type of brushing the animal, which makes making the hair stand up. So it makes the animal look stronger than it really is. However, Shmuel shagel emir metumi. Shmuel permitted to put in fringes to beautify a garment, where they would make these like fringes made out of silk all around. He permitted you to make these fringes l'sarbala for a coat. In other words, you see how far the Gemara is going to see what's permitted when you're doing marketing that makes something look. We're very gullible, and we're very, as consumers, we can be very impressionable, and therefore the Gemara. You see how far the Gemara is going. That you can't just, even though it's something that possibly a guy could see, you might not be able to put on fringes. Even though I could see that. No, but you get excited. You see these beautiful fringes, and you're gonna get excited about the garment when really it's not so exciting. But he permitted you to put fringes on l'sarbala on the coat. He permitted to starch with like this bran water, krame, these ornate garments that have figures on them. And Rabbi Shari Lemeidak Tzrode, he permitted to knock, like to bang these canvas garments with like a piece of wood, so it should look like the threads are thin. This could be bordering on fooling someone, but they permitted you to do this. Rabbi Charlotte Slume Gide, he permitted them to paint the arrows. Again, it looks more enticing. Rapapa Bar Shmuel Charlotte Slume Dikule, he permitted them to paint the baskets. Again, a regular basket, you look at it, yeah, 20 cents, you know what I'm saying? See a painted basket, ooh, $2, whatever, home goods, and suddenly it's more exciting. They permitted you to do that. I says the Gemara, but I thought this fits into the category. But not now we learned in the Mishnah, and you cannot beautify. Well, it's Adam, not the person, well, it's a baby, not the animal, it's not the vessels. I thought you can't just make it look nice. Says the Gemara, like Kasha, that's not difficult. It depends. When it's new, it's permitted because you're just making it more prettier. Now, whoever wants to add on more money because he likes, the trimming, he's Michael. It is a good quality. It's just you're making it prettier. How about Tiki? When it's forbidden, when it's old, where you're really being deceitful, because you're making it look new when it's really old. You took like that brush and you took that old bench you had lying around for like 7 years, and suddenly you painted it and now it looks like a nice bench, and then suddenly he's using it 3 weeks later, crack, because that would be deceitful, that would be forbidden. Now says the Gemara, Pikus to Adamaihi. We said Ema Varchasin. So we said by an animal, you give him like these steroids and like make the hair stand up. What's the problem when you're selling, let's say, Ebed Kanani, that you make him look more beautiful than he is? So it says the Gemara, Kihoda hu Avda Saba. They're like this old slave, the Azal Saba Lareisha Ladikna. He went and he dyed the hair on his head and on his beard, which his hair was white. He dyed it black, and he looked like a young man. Asa coming to Rabbi, came from the Rava, on my lay, said to Rava, Zivnan, buy me. For as a slave, he was a Kanani, and because Ebed Ivri was forbidden after the Churban, when there's no more Yavel. So he said, buy me. Amalei said to him, you anim b'nei veisecha. Quote him a Mishnah in Avos. He says, it's better for me to support Jewish paupers, and they'll serve me. Let the aniyim b'nei veisecha. I'm not going to buy you a non-Jewish slave. It's also coming to Rav Papa Shmuel. Goes on to the next Jewish victim, Rav Papa Shmuel. Zavne, and he bought him. So one day Rav Papa Shmuel says to him, Ashken Maya, he has a slave, says, pour me water. Azal, the guy goes into the washroom. Chavri l'reish of l'dikne, he washes off the dye of his hair. He whitens the hair on his head and his beard. Amalei comes back to his master, says, Chazida no koshesh ma'avuch. He says, I'm older than your father. What are you telling me to go serve you water? So Karin Avshei, Rav Papa Bar Shmuel said it regarding himself, the pasuk in Mishlei. Tzadik mitzara nechletz. A tzadik is saved from a tzara, meaning referring to Rava, because Rava chap not to buy this Kanani. But Yove Acher Tachtav, which really the gears is actually Russia, so I would imagine he wouldn't want to call himself a Russia, but the Yove Acher Tachtav, someone else comes and takes his place, meaning me, I got duped by this old man. I got had where he went and he washed off his black and that's the case. Hadnal Chazav, which I return to you, Perek Hazav, the fourth parak in Mesechta's Bava Metzia, which spoke about Hazav Kaina regarding Kinyanim, regarding the proper acquisitions, and that I know. Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.